I am so excited to be here with Dave the Quitter Ross. Dave, how are you?
I'm fantastic. How are you?
I'm great. It's a great afternoon.
It is. It's absolutely gorgeous outside.
Gorgeous day out.
Yeah.
And it's such an honor to be able to interview you and hear about your amazing journey and your amazing story.
Awesome.
So, you're very successful nowadays. And I know and I understand from reading your book and understand from, conversation that it wasn't always that way for you.
Right.
So let's talk about the last 10, 15 years.
Wow. Okay. Last 10 or 15 years. So let's go back to when I was seemingly successful, right? So I had a core group of friends where we ran around together all the time. I was engaged. I had a downtown apartment in San Diego. So seemingly everything was great. I had a job where I was traveling around, speaking on the stage all over the United States. And then I decided that I wanted to make some changes and I wanted to not travel as much. So I tried to start a business, and instead of realizing that it was probably a non-starter, I kept throwing money at it, and ultimately I reached a point where I had invested so much money that paying the bills became tough. And I think I really started to wear on myself, and my self-doubt really kind of creeped in, and I started feeling not good enough. And I think a lot of that came from the lack of finances, but also the actions and behaviors that were in my life. I was drinking heavily to the point where my fiance had asked me several times to probably chill out on that, but I didn't see that there was a problem. I'd always been a drinker, and I actually started drinking consistently in my teens, and that went on for a long, long time. So the short version, I ended up breaking off my engagement. I no longer could pay bills. I burned through every friend and relationship that I had as I traveled around couch surfing, and ultimately
That's right.
I would land in my brother's basement for 6 months, and I was a detriment to that relationship with him and his new wife and family. I ended up in Florida at my sister's place. I ended up staying in a spare bedroom at a friend's mother's house with no furniture in the room. So all the things that I thought I had lost, and that went on for about 5 years. And it was a really soul-crushing experience to realize that I didn't have money, I didn't have a way to support myself, and I was in my 30s and I was having to rely on people. So it was really, really bad,
Right.
but that did lead to where we are now. And through that process, I really took a hard look at my life, and I realized I wanted to quit smoking, and I had wanted that for over 20 years. So somehow I figured out a way to do that. And in that moment, I was actually staying at my sister's place in Florida, and there was a moment where, and we'll probably get into this, I built up to how I'm going to quit, which is really what's brought so many people to the I Finally Quit movement. So we'll talk about that in a second probably, but that moment where I did quit, I kind of, for the first time ever in my life, I sat back, I exhaled, and I went, wow, I finally quit. And it was that day when I quit smoking, that it wasn't 3 weeks in, it wasn't 6 months in, it was that day where I just felt a relief and was like, wow, I finally quit, And that feeling that I had, I wanted everybody to experience that, because I know how hard I struggled with quitting. It was, cigarettes were just a nonstop problem for me in life. Even when I thought that I was cool and that smoking was okay, it was still a problem, And that relief was what led to the I Finally Quit movement, so to speak. And so to wrap up the question there, 15 years and being successful now, through that process, I quit drinking, and then I've been able to develop an 8-step program to help people, or 8-step system. And really it's about community and bringing people together, and it seems to be doing great things for other people, and that's really what the vision's about. Yeah,
that's huge. I love this story, right?
Right.
It's such an inspiration and such an inspiring story to hear, because you can read a book about someone like, oh, I'm not a smoker, or I don't do this, or I don't do drugs, or I don't drink, or I don't smoke. And for the person that is trying to recover or get rid of something in their life that they know is toxic, they'll look at that person and be like, well, you've never smoked before,
right,
or you've never done this before. I'm the one that's doing it. You
right,
don't know what it's like to walk in my shoes.
Right.
So it's so great that you had your story of basically going to ground zero and hitting rock bottom.
Right.
And you know, in your book, which I love, you talk about how alcohol completely manipulated everything you did.
Right.
So everything from, when you talked about going to a marathon to pick up, I think your ex-fiance at the time, you were, okay, I gotta park here because this is where the beer garden is,
right,
you know?
right.
And I mean, what a breath of fresh air it must be now for you to think, I don't have that.
Right. So as an addict or somebody who's walked around with bad habits for more than half of their life, it's amazing how actions and behaviors can dictate almost every moment of our lives, right? So I do remember going to my brother's Little League games, and before I would go there, I had to make sure that I had the right cup with the right lid so that I could sneak alcohol in, and I wasn't even 21, right? So it's moments like that. It's moments about the going to the marathon and picking up the ex-fiance when she was done running. All of those little decisions in life, everything's centered around the bad habit.
Right.
The cool thing now for me is everything I do centers around quitting. And I might be one of the only people on the planet, at least I feel this way, who has spent more money on their bad habits after they quit them than when they were actually doing them. You know.
Now you're researching it. You're creating help for people to get over these bad habits, to get away from their addiction.
Right. Yeah. So it's one thing to tell my story, which I think is inspiring or can be for some people, because not everybody wants to hear from somebody who just has the book learning part, but they want the experience in life part, right? And that's what I bring to the table, is the experience in life. But in making sure that I'm delivering a solid message for my people, like you said, it's research, and that costs time and money. It's making sure that you can get the message out to everybody, right? I was so delusional when I first thought, man, I'm just going to write a book and everybody's going to think that this is the coolest thing ever. But then you have to realize that, wow, if you want people to actually read your book, you have to figure out how to get it out in front of them, right?
They don't just show up.
They don't just show up. You can't just walk up to strangers on the street and say, hey, I wrote a book, and a million of them sell. So it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of money, it takes a lot of effort, and but that feeds into what my passion really is.
I was going to get to that, because that's why you do this. You are so passionate about, hey guys, this is what I went through. It completely is like a dark cloud over your life, and as soon as, no pun intended with the cigarette smoke and all of that,
That's
but I mean,
pretty good.
but waking up with the hangovers, or probably never even getting to the point of being hungover because it was a consistent buzz, and how it completely destroys your life. And you want people to just wake up and feel that fresh breath of fresh air.
Yeah, so I definitely want them to feel that fresh breath, or that breath of fresh air, excuse me. But what I really want them to do is to quit their actions and behaviors before they get to the point where I was. So if we really break this down, my bad habits, my drinking, they led me to homelessness, right? Led me to a place where I couldn't pay my bills, led me to a place where I was relying on other people just so I could scrap together enough pennies to go out and buy more booze, right? Which is it's a really dangerous cycle to be in. It doesn't feel good at all. There's a lot of self-doubt, self-hate, and suicidal thoughts that come with that. So it is a very dark cloud. Now, many people will experience that, and once they're in that state, quitting becomes almost insurmountable, because the inner voice that we have reminds us constantly that we're not good enough, or that we've failed time and time again. Now, what makes my story interesting, I think, is that I ignored every road sign along the way. It's, every time something came into my life that said, stop drinking, stop smoking, you're really hurting yourself, I continued on past that. Right up until the point where I drank myself into an intensive care unit for 8 days. And anybody in the healthcare industry will tell you that the last place that anybody wants you is the intensive care unit. The reason is it costs the hospital a lot of money to keep somebody in there because they have to pay all these specialists to keep you alive. And
And most people that go into the ICU don't come out.
Don't always come out. And so when I first came up with that, I finally quit that feeling, right? That was with cigarettes. Well, it took another 5 years of drinking heavily before I reached a point.
Tell us what drinking heavily is, because I love how you compare it.
Yeah.
Because drinking, heavily to one person is completely different to another person. So,
In order for that to really make sense, and because when I tell people what the volume is, they're like, no way, right?
Yeah.
But there was a method to it, there was a reason to it. So just to back up, when I was a smoker, from the time I wanted to quit, when I was 16 and on, I would hear others tell about how they quit, or, I quit, so you should quit. And the first thing that us addicts do is we want to justify our actions and behaviors, and we want to compare them to somebody else, right? So somebody would say, Dave, you should quit smoking. I quit. The first thing I would say was, really? Well, how long did you smoke? And how much did you smoke? So when they would say, well, I smoke like a pack a day for 10 years, I would be like, well, I smoke a pack and a half, so whatever worked for you isn't going to work for me. And a lot of times in the quitting community, we have that programming in our head where we think that, well, my habit is worse than yours, so therefore whatever you did isn't going to work for me. Right. So I had that mentality for years and years and years. And I prevented quitting, or I allowed that to prevent me from quitting smoking many times, where I would not listen to people's advice because I would think that my habit was worse than theirs.
Of course.
So I knew that was the internal dialogue, right? Because I'd been having that internal dialogue for about 15, 20 years. So when I found myself at my sister's place, so when I found myself around my 11-year-old niece and not wanting to contribute to this anymore, and whether that was really, in my mind, that's what motivated me, right? So whether it was real or not, in my world, that's what I used.
And it motivated you because you did not want your niece to live with secondhand smoke, or you didn't want her to pick up the habit, or?
Well, basically, I didn't want to contribute to, a perceived bad health situation for her. So even though my business had failed years before, I still considered myself a business person. So what I did with my niece was I formulated a contract. And it was very simple, and there's actually a little copy of it in my book. It might just be 2 or 3 sentences long, I don't recall, but basically I made a deal with her that said, listen, smoking costs me about $5.50 a day. I will make you a deal that if you don't smoke between now and the time that you're 18, I will give you $1.50 every day, because in my mind I was thinking, well, I was spending $5.50, so I'd be saving $4 a day. Even though I'm not even for sure how I was still paying for cigarettes, to be honest with you. But so we made that deal, and we kept track, and having that added accountability. And I think that's what a support group is. And at the time, my support group didn't exist. So what I was doing was I was creating a support group, and I was also training somebody in my life how I wanted to be supported. And it turns out, years later, I would develop these 8 steps to quitting. And those 2 things, that was really 2 parts of the 8 steps, right? So to get back to how much is a lot when it comes to drinking.
Yeah.
So when I had that moment of, I finally quit when it came to smoking, right? That internal dialogue was still there. And the first thing that happened in my brain was, so you quit smoking, big deal. Millions of people do that. So instantly, I couldn't even congratulate myself or live in that moment and be like, wow, you did it. Instantly, I was still negative, like, hey, just because you've done that doesn't really mean anything unless you can inspire other people. Well, I thought, well, if I'm going to inspire other people to quit smoking, they're going to say, well, how much did you smoke and for how long? And if I didn't say, well, I was smoking 29 packs of cigarettes a day, if my habit wasn't worse than theirs, they weren't going to listen, right? So basically, I had quit smoking, and I realized the next step was to quit drinking, because the drinking led me to the homelessness I found myself in. And I knew that all the people that were still close to me or talking to me realized, wow, Dave's just a drunk, right? So in order for me to quit drinking, that was going to be huge for people that knew me. People were going to be like, wow, that guy that drinks that much. But what is that much, right? That was the question. I keep kind of dodging it. Well, what I wanted to do was I made a conscious decision to drink even more. So I drank enough that I was homeless, right? Yeah. I drank so much that I lost all the people around me. Nobody wanted to be around me, and I just kept drinking. So to say I was drinking a lot is an understatement. But what I decided to do was drink even more, because I knew I'd found a little switch in my head that allowed me to quit smoking. So I wanted to find and use that same switch to quit drinking. And I believed I already found the switch, but I just hadn't flipped it yet because I hadn't done anything major. So for me, what major was I would drink more. And what more was to me was I would drink a fifth of bourbon every single day. Now, even hearing a fifth of bourbon, not everybody understands what that is, but that's one of those bottles, that would, I don't know, last a restaurant a few days maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
And so the equivalent of a fifth of bourbon is drinking about 4.3 bottles of wine. And I was doing that daily.
And then you think too, if you did it one night or day, chances are you're not going to want to do it the next day or anytime soon.
No.
To a body that is not addicted to that, right?
You bring up a great point. If a person sat down and they had 3 glasses of bourbon, they would probably not want to drink again for a week or two, right?
Yeah.
And I was drinking a whole bottle every single day. And my plan was to do that every day until I turned 40. Because I thought, well, when I turn 40, I'll flip that switch. Now I'll have something that I can take to the masses and say, okay, look, here is 8 steps to quitting. It worked for cigarettes, it worked for drinking, it'll work for you too. Well, unfortunately, my body did not like that. I was able to do it for about 3.5 years.
And so what were you drinking before? I mean, it's enough, like you said, it's enough to make you homeless. It's enough for you to literally shatter all relationships,
right.
Not have your career, not have a life. So that's, I mean...
I would say I was probably drinking at least half of that, if not a little bit more. So
you doubled your consumption.
Right.
And it proves how much you wanted to help people. Because like you said, you were doing it to say, guys, I want to prove that I can help you.
Right. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that I had a story.
Yeah.
That nobody could ever say, oh, you quit drinking? Well, how much? Because I drink more than you. So whatever you did isn't going to work for me. I wanted to take that argument away from everybody, and so that when they went, wait, how much? They instantly realized, well, okay, this guy drank a lot and he quit. I want to listen. I want to hear what he has to say.
Yeah.
And so that's where my mindset was. But as we know, my body didn't make it. And my pancreas shut down, my liver shut down, my kidneys shut down. And I spent those 8 days in an ICU, 3 days of which they kept me in a medically induced coma just because the pain was so intense that they really wanted to keep me kind of knocked out so that my body had a chance to at least kind of detox and recover a little bit. But I've even had some people say, well, you had it lucky because you were in and out of consciousness as you detoxed. And I don't think there's anything lucky about fighting for your life. But I think that the fact that I came out of it, the fact that I was still committed to wanting to help others and put this all together into something that I could help others with and teach them that, hey, look, it worked for me. You might as well give it a shot too. And the cool thing is I don't think that my way is the only way to quit. I think there's tons of great programs and things out there. I know that from experience, the 8 things that really helped me, and I know that they've helped my online community, and it's pretty amazing to see that growing.
It is. I mean, and you go in your book, which I love your book. People that are watching this they have to read your book.
Thank you.
But you go into deep details of your experience of your body shutting down. And that itself, I mean, I get goosebumps even remembering the story. So you're not even going into the deep details. So people need to absolutely read that and just listen to your book. Oh, I listen to it, but they can read it also. Either one. But I mean, that gives such a detailed story of your experience of going into the coma. And like you said, it was no easy route, you know, and then I think the hardest part, in my opinion, for you was not necessarily being in the coma and with the detox, but now your life after. Because for so many years, there's a couple things with addiction, right? Yes, nicotine's addicting. Yes, alcohol has an addictive pattern. It's addictive to our bodies, but the habits.
Right.
Your daily rituals, the people you surrounded yourself with, the places you would go. You know, one of the things you and I have talked about is when you were drinking so heavily, your only friends were bartenders.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not going to work out.
No, because, you know, humans need interaction, right? Being homeless does tend to lead a person to, it's pretty isolating, right? You can't really have a girlfriend. You know, when you're homeless, it's kind of hard to approach somebody and be like, hey, you're really pretty, you want to be my girlfriend, and not have a home or be able to buy a dinner or whatever. So it's isolating.
But
drinking is isolating. And so when the only people that are left on the planet that will listen to you are people that will listen to you because they're paid to, and they're paid to continue to give you drinks, which this is not a knock on bartenders at all. I love bartenders, right? But if those are your only friends in life and you're only hanging out with them while they're at work, that becomes a problem.
So how did you get through it? What type of connections did you make? What pulled you through to be where you are today, to being successful, Dave the Quitter, Ross?
So that's a great question. So the actual quitting process for me was to look at these 8 steps. And when it got into step 2 and step 3, these are really the support aspects of it, right? So I realized I didn't really have a support system. Now I still had, for some reason, my family who would still listen to me or believe in me. I had an opportunity to say, listen, the last 5 years, if we could hit a reset button, maybe you could help me by doing this, right? So I started to educate them on what I thought I needed as far as interaction-wise. Like I didn't need somebody rolling their eyes when I said I was going to quit or, you know, I was struggling. What I needed was somebody to give me encouragement in a certain way or send me a text message at this time of day. So I started reaching out to friends, and then I started reaching out to family, and then to some friends, and I had to make new friends, which for me is not always the easiest thing. So I just started to build a support system of like-minded individuals. You know, so people ask me now, maybe I'm going to rephrase your question a little bit. Like, what is the I Finally Quit movement, right? Mm-hmm. To me, it boils down to 4 things. It's about joining, connecting, quitting, and inspiring. So the way I look at it, I drank and smoked for years and years and years, and I didn't really want to. Even those last 3.5 years where I wanted to, in the sense like I wanted to take away somebody's belief pattern that their drinking was going to be worse than mine. So that was a motivating thing, but I was looking for inspiration for years. Like I wanted the right person to come along and inspire me, or to just give me a magic pill and take away my habit. Well, as we all know, there's no magic pill or patch or gum or anything that just takes away your habit.
Right.
Quitting things takes a lot of work. I tell people all the time, quitting is hard, giving up is easy, right? We can give up.
Beautifully said.
We can give up, and we can try and quit and give up, but to quit is actually hard. So I was looking for inspiration, And in that, looking for inspiration, it made me look for a group to join. And once you join a group, that's not enough. It's one thing to do it, but unless you connect with the other members, unless you actually have a conversation or you connect on that level where you can share with somebody and say, listen, this is what I'm doing. I know it's detrimental. I struggle with it. I want to quit it. And you have that thing too. And when they say, yes, I do have that thing. I smoke too and I don't want to. So on the most basic of level, you got two people or 200 or 2,000 or 20,000 that join, but then they have to connect. And they have to have a conversation.
Make the effort.
They have to make an effort. We've all heard, I don't know, I should probably know who said this because I quote it all the time, but the journey of 1,000 steps starts with one step, or 1,000 miles starts with one step. So that's the first thing, is to join. Then you have to connect. And in that connection, where you find those like-minded individuals that know the two most powerful words on the planet of me too, and allows us to connect, then we can motivate each other to quit. So the person looking for inspiration and is desperate, they join, they connect, they quit, and then the missing magical piece of most, I think, support groups out there is getting that person to stick around who is now the quitter and wants nothing more than to inspire somebody else. And the cyclical thing that we've built here is people come in, they look for, they want to be inspired. Somehow they get inspired, and then what's really weird, I'm going to tie my arms in a knot here, but a new person comes in and they're looking for inspiration, and then there's this person.
That's already 4 days ahead.
Yeah, 4 days ahead or 4 weeks or whatever, that bang, and that's what makes the I Finally Quit movement what it is. And it's beautiful. For me, it's amazing.
It's beautiful, yeah, and I want to talk about that too, because it's so great. Like you said, we want connection. And in general, we want that nurturing, right? And going through a detox, which is what it is, it's stressful on your body. You have to give up habits. You may not, if you're a smoker and you go to smoke at 10 o'clock every morning with a bunch of buddies at work, well, you're no longer going to do that. And just to have someone that goes, I understand.
Exactly. See,
and I've been there.
Quitting can actually be an isolating event too.
Call me
right?
instead.
Right. So just like I was saying, that the actual habit can be isolating. I mean, you think about a smoker, right? Let's stay on that. Well, a lot of times you can't smoke indoors. You can't smoke at your office, right? So you have to go outside. But you don't just go outside, because now many places have a thing, hey, you can't smoke within 20 feet or 50 feet. So you got to go out there. And so it can be very isolating. I've stood in the rain, I've stood in the snow, I've been in 100-degree heat just to fulfill that habit, right? And sometimes it's very isolating, or sometimes it can be a group thing, like, hey, my entire family smokes, or all of my coworkers smoke. So when you remove yourself from that, one of the fears that people have in quitting is they're going to be missing out. They're going to be losing this group of people. Well, I think it's not necessary for them to lose that group. They might have to step away from it temporarily, but when they step away, I don't want them to be isolated. I want them to be surrounded by other people going, yeah, doesn't this suck? Remember when we were over there and we were hanging out with our friends? Oh, but you're here now? Okay, great. Let's us be friends, right? So they end up quitting. You actually gain. You're not missing out. You're gaining. You're gaining a new community. And guess what? That group that's over here, your family and those coworkers, they're witnessing. They're seeing what's going on.
Transformation. Yeah. And most likely they're jealous. They're not doing it themselves.
And you know what? All you can do is continue on in your path, and inadvertently, you will inspire them, and then they'll come along. So, I might live in a dream world in my head, but I see a day where the I Finally Quit movement is huge. People will see that, the little logo or something on a t-shirt, and want to spark up a conversation, go, oh, you too? You quit something? What is that?
Right.
So that's kind of the ultimate vision.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's your aha moment.
Yeah, it's for me, it was all kind of, originally it was about that IFQ logo, and it still really is. I think it bonds people together.
So your IFQ, your I Finally Quit, that was with cigarettes, correct?
That was the
That was your aha.
Yes.
That was you woke up
The day that I had my last smoke, you know, I detail in my book exactly what I did.
Jump over and definitely read his book.
I went to an extreme that I don't necessarily recommend everybody do, but what I did was I just made myself sick on smoking. I smoked more and more and more and more. I smoked more in one day than I probably would in a week, you know? I mean, it was just really bad. So the next day when I woke up, I put on a patch and I was like, this is it. I'm gonna quit.
And you talk about how you I don't know, you borrowed, begged, got money from all places to buy the patch, which I'm not sure how much those run, but you said you had to
I spent a couple $100 because I got all 8 weeks together and I didn't even have an income. So yeah, it took a lot of finagling to get them.
You were ready.
I was ready. And so I put on that first patch, and just hours later, I literally was like, wow, this is really dumb. I'm done with this. And I took off the patch. Now, I'm not saying the patch doesn't work. I think the patch works for many, many people. Just, I'd reached a moment really quickly in my head where I was like, I don't need this. And I did exhale, I finally quit. And it was that moment where I was like, man, I want everybody to experience this, whether it's smoking, drinking, or whatever. So, and that day I started sketching out like just IFQ, I finally quit. And then just, it kind of morphed together and I was like, wow, that kind of looks like a logo. And, you know, I thought, this is something that I think people might want. And that's why I made the conscious decision to drink like an idiot. And I wouldn't recommend that to anybody either. I mean, let's face it, drinking, as an alcoholic, I never thought drinking killed people, unless you were dumb and you were in a car wreck. But that's not true. I mean, people die. And without this getting just all of a sudden, wow, really, really heavy. Quitting is about life or death. People that join our community that are smoking, they need to quit because their doctor said, hey, you need surgery, whatever the surgery might be. And they said, but we won't do it unless you quit smoking. Smoking, we all know, causes COPD, lung disease, cancer.
And all sorts of cancers, not just the lung cancer.
Right. All sorts of things that will kill you. Drinking and drugs will kill a person. So when I took this up as my mission to help 10,000 people quit, whatever it might be, I look at this seriously as it is a matter of life and death, and I want to help people, and I want to help them avoid the situations that I put myself in, and I want their family members to understand that the person in your life that is still drinking, that is still doing drugs, you know, they might be removed in their own mind. They might not see the problem the same way that you as the family member, the loved ones do. So that's why it's so important to have the right support group around them. And that's what we're building, and that's what we're having fun doing, is saving lives.
Beautiful. And you are saving lives. I think, absolutely, you know, one person that reads your book at a time, or one person that joins the movement, I mean, you are absolutely saving lives.
I'm very humbled by that, but I believe that, and it's an awesome feeling. Just every time a new person joins the movement, every time somebody makes their very first post in our private group, every time somebody else comes along that doesn't know that person, says, hey, welcome, I'm on day 31 or I'm on day 3. Those interactions, to see that connection and to see that inspiration transferring, it's amazing.
Who is Dave the Quitter today?
Okay, so today, Dave the Quitter is a motivator, an inspirer. He is somebody who really has other people's best interests at heart. I am a former smoker. I am a former drinker. I am an interviewer. Today we're on the other side.
Facebook Live.
We're social media. But basically, who I am at my core is probably still an addict. But my addiction today is different. My addiction today is really about getting other people the help that they need or the support that they need so that they can experience that moment I had on the couch in Brandon, Florida, which is just outside of Tampa. It was that moment where I could sit back and I could say, I finally quit. And so that's who I am now. I am the guy that wants other people to feel that.
Beautiful. Well, it's been an absolute pleasure for me to interview you.
Thank you.
I had chills throughout it when you talked about certain, steps and even, and I know your story, but even to hear it again and hear your generosity and how you clearly put yourself at risk because you wanted to help other people. And you're a survivor to help change other people's lives.
Awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time. And
welcome.
as always, it's great talking with you.
You're welcome.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Boom.